The religious right and education. Prior to Brown versus the Board of Education, there was a tremendous amount of religious schools in the South that were 100% white. In 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education said that separate but equal was not so. And that started the movement, really, for civil rights. And how does that play in education? Well, during that time, the Republican Party, it was the party that was pro-union, the party that wanted to have an increase in amount of education available for students. The GI Bill, things like that, that's all gone away. Now, from 1954 to 1974, there was a series of lawsuits to try and keep segregation alive and functioning in the South, which is what white people in the South wanted. Those initial white people were Democrats. As you will hear, as every ignorant member of the GOP will point out to you, that it was Democrats that owned slaves. We know. We know. Pat Robertson, and other leaders that were involved in the Christian right, the evangelical right, began getting involved in politics in the 1970s, specifically with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1976, but he wasn't ready. And during the 4 years between 1976 and 1980, Ronald Reagan used his influence as a former actor and the governor of California to get involved with the evangelical right. And that, along with preventing the hostages from being returned in 1980, it turns out that the Republican Party made Iran wait until after the election to give back our hostages. So Americans suffered for political reasons thanks to GOP. It's consistent, boys and girls. Their behavior has been reprehensible for years. Ronald Reagan, for the Christian right, is the most important president in American history. He is the one who started the process to where we are now. Under Reagan, the Republican Party began to cut funds for education. Under Reagan began to cut funds from taxes and turning the taxes from the corporations and wealthy to the middle class and low class. And that all plays into education. I live in Florida. We spend $11,000 per pupil. I used to live in New York. They spend $24,000 per pupil. $8,000 comes from the Department of Education, which 167 congressmen and women tried to shut down last year that were Republican. Whereas in New York, it's less than 2,000 of the 24,000 comes from the Department of Education. The rest of it comes from tax money. And in my lifetime, I was born in 1970. When I was a child, there was SHOP, there was home ec. We had something called BOCES programs in New York, where if you were not destined to go to college, you could become a carpenter, an electrician. And these were worthwhile trades. And you can see that with the CHIPS Act and with the Infrastructure Act, the money that was provided for real jobs. We need the middle class to function in our society. And the GOP has been denying education money my entire life. It's estimated between 2009 and today that education has been underfunded by $1.5 trillion. Last year alone, it was $145 billion that education was underfunded. That means because people in the Republican Party want to privatize education to turn a profit, your children's education, which could be lavishly funded, are not. And that choice is made by members of the GOP. Democrats, generally speaking, do not cut education funding. I've lived in major cities and I've lived in small cities, and it's the Democrats who are always supporting education in my lifetime and the Republicans who are always trying to cut education. We could use plumbers, electricians, people that can do things with their hands manually, especially as things like the Infrastructure Act and the CHIPS Act, and we try and move to a different type of economy, because we're going to have people replaced by computers. Go to Walmart. How many of us will go to Walmart today, or Publix, or any other supermarket, and bag our own groceries? That never happened 10 years ago. Look at all those jobs that are disappearing. That's the tip of the iceberg. Cars are going to be completely made by computer, automated. So having those skills on how to do something as simple as construction would be a useful time. We need to make sure that we give Joseph Biden a full Senate and Congress of Democrats so we can codify Roe. I would also like to see them to have Medicare for all and treat education the way we treat the military. I hope you all have a happy Thursday. Please remember to vote true and vote blue. If you don't, the GOP is going to take rights away from the women in your life, and they're going to be living in Gilead, on top of being ignorant because they've cut $1.5 trillion from education in the last 15 years. The GOP is reprehensible. They have no morality. Please vote for someone who wants education, who wants to give women sovereignty, who wants to make sure that everyone votes. And that eliminates every single fucking Republican.